Welcome to the Industrial Edge podcast with me, Joe Haggis. In this podcast, we sit down with a broad range of professionals that are involved in a wide range of industrial settings. From maintenance and reliability professionals, facility managers, engineers, through to operations and production leaders, consultants and business owners who support all things that keep the modern world we live in safe, productive and efficient. We discuss the unique stories our guests have been on personally, while getting into some of the deeper details, challenges and opportunities that face them in their particular industries and areas of specialisation. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome, Andy. So we've got Andy Gailey, who's the owner of Uptime Consultant. And he's been running that business for the past 10 years. So thanks, Andy, for coming on. I've been following you for a while on LinkedIn and your journey with your own business, which is brilliant. And you've got lots of experience that we'll talk about and go through today. But maybe we'll start there in terms of your early career, in-depth technical career. It's varied. You come from technical procurement. I can see in there. You've also done a lot of time in prototyping and prototype machining in them early days. Do you want to talk us through them early days? Sort of them first 10 years as an apprentice, and talk us through them.
Well,
them first
as
times.
you can see, I'm near the end of my career at the moment. I started a 4-year apprenticeship, like a lot of lads did in Coventry, back in the late 70s, and it was a time of change. I started 78, and by 1980 we'd got a big decline in engineering manufacturing. We also had a change of government. I'm ambivalent to governments, really. I don't care what colour they are, but we had Margaret Thatcher, and she said we're not going to have manufacturing in the UK. We're going to be a service industry. So I had a great apprenticeship. I loved every minute of the 4 years. For the first year, I went to a training school with 100 other apprentices, and by the second year, that training school had gone because there were no apprentices. So I did that 4-year technical apprenticeship with a small turbine company, and I had about 4 offers of apprenticeships. I decided to take the smallest company. They only took 2 apprentices a year because I thought, well, if I'm an apprentice at Rolls-Royce or Dunlop or GEC, then I'm just going to be one of 20 or 30 apprentices. Whereas if I went to Penny Turbines, for a start, it was only 1.5 miles up the road, so I could cycle there. And I was already avidly researching and looking at gas turbines as a 12 or 13-year-old. So I don't know whether that happens to 12 or 13-year-olds now, but I was already ready when I was 12 to go and start. I left school at 15, and then 2 weeks later I was 16 and started that apprenticeship. So I was there for the whole 4 years, and then luckily in 1982 when I came out, they said, we have got a position for you, even though we were in a recession. And I did another 4 years with them as a prototype horizontal borer. So I worked on jig mills and mainly in like a tool making environment. So nearly everything I did was a one-off. So the margin for error was 0, because some of this stuff, because it's made out of exotic materials, it couldn't be reworked. You couldn't weld this stuff. I mean, these are like gas cans for small turbines. And then, after that, I decided I wanted to move on after 4 years. So I actually went and jumped right into the fire. I went for 2 years to what you call a subcontract machine tool room. And that's where you do tool room work. Again, mainly prototypes, Ministry of Defence, Vickers Shipbuilding, lots of high quality exotic materials again. But the time frames were a lot shorter. So in R&D with Noel Penny, it didn't matter how long it took you had to get it right. So it was kind of a relaxed approach to everything. Whereas in subcontract, they gave you times that were almost like unattainable. So, something that would have took me a week before They want it in 2 days. Well, I learnt a lot. I learnt a lot quickly in those 2 years. And yeah, even I think one of the first things I had was to make a press tool, which I'd never done before, never made a press tool. And when they gave me the drawing, it was a side panel of a Hoover washing machine. It was the panel.
Okay.
And so I said to somebody, what is this? They said, well, you've got to make the 3-part press tool that makes that panel, and there's the flame cut blanks. So it was a real kind of baptism of fire. Obviously starting to get my bend calculations out and 3 degrees draft and all of those things, and machine things, with an angle, which is, you want everything straight really as a machinist. And yeah, so that was interesting. And then I had a call from somebody I worked with at Noel Penny Turbines. That company went bust when I left, a couple of years after I left. A lot of the guys moved to a company called Ferguson Formula Developments. That's kind of allied to Harry Ferguson and four-wheel drive, and Ferguson, I think it was called Ferguson Developments. Noel Penny's building was actually in Ferguson Developments' old building. And these guys had been there with Ferguson, then they'd been there with Noel Penny, and then they'd moved to Ferguson Formula Developments, which is 4x4, rally sport, motorsport, anything that somebody wanted a four-wheel drive making for. Ferguson Formula did it. So I was involved with, right from the get-go, with the XJ220 Jaguar for the motor show car. And then I saw that all the way through. I was there 6 years. So I produced all the prototype and test gearboxes, transmissions for the road car. The first kind of 10 I did of those. And then he went out to another machining company and then did the Le Mans race-winning cars, all their transaxles, and then the McLaren F1 road car. So it's really interesting. And by the time I got to that McLaren F1 transmission, I knew I'd done the best work I was probably ever going to do. And a lot of things were going fully CNC. And I hated that. I was an NC, numerical control guy. I'd done a CNC course. I'd worked on a 4-axis universal CNC. Hated it. Hated Heinehan. I hated it. There just was no art in it. And then the last 6 months there, I was asked to go, and some guy left like overnight, and they said, oh, we need somebody in technical procurement. This is a person that speaks to the subcontractors and then is a liaison between the design office, build shop, internal manufacturing, and probably I looked after about 25 subcontractors making components.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's going from you mentioned there at Noel Penny, that was manufacturing. Is that right? Turbines you're saying there?
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
We made bespoke turbines that went from, Noel Penny he worked at Rover Gas Turbines. So they built the BRM gas turbine Le Mans car. And he came out, he was a boffin. And when he formed Noel Penny Turbines, his whole thing was automotive is going to be gas turbines in the future. Everything's going to be gas turbines. He was adamant about that. So that meant that everything we did was kind of, was smaller units. And I remember machining one gas can that was the size of a Coke can. And these were for the first kind of cruise missiles.
Yeah, well, okay. Interesting.
Way back.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's interesting, right? Again, like you say, there's a few things to pick up there around, especially like your point around, the sort of, as CNCs were coming in, you're starting to lose that sort of art and skill of engineering starts sort of fading. And you also touched as well, on apprenticeships. That's something that, there's still apprenticeships going, of course, in the UK, but they're few and far between compared to what they used to be, I'm sure, back then. And like you say, manufacturing obviously sort of slowly slowing down in the UK, right, over that period. And when you reflect on that, do you feel like that's really changed? Apprenticeships and the quality of apprenticeships has changed over time. And what's your view around sort of skills in engineering and sort of someone maybe like myself who started in doing an apprenticeship. My apprenticeship was in the Air Force. which was really good, right? It gave me, I was a weapons technician, so that gave me a good, I did mechanical, but I also did electrical, and it gave me a good vary of skill. I suppose the question, Andy, is around, how do you view apprenticeships nowadays, and how do you view sort of skill in engineering? Do you feel like it's still there?
Yeah, well, we all know we've got a massive hole when it comes to skilled engineers. And one of the things I did, I actually wanted to be a trustee for the company's pension fund at one point, and this is allied to it. And so I actually learned about demographics and fan charts and how long we're going to live, and the way demographics works. The thing that I looked at was when I was 20 and coming out of my apprenticeship, I saw one of my old lecturers, and he was the one that told me the training school had closed, and they were taking in what they called youth training services, youth training scheme. Oh,
YTS.
Yeah, YTS. And he said it was, it wasn't going to last very long, because all of the companies that the guys I was with in the first year, a lot of them went. One of them was British Aerospace, a Bitterswell. They had 16 out of the 100 apprentices there, and in year one, Bitterswell closed, and they were all made redundant, and that was unheard of. Nobody signed a contract for an apprenticeship and got made redundant in Coventry. But we started to have a whole generation, starting then, so, back in the late 70s, early 80s, that were disaffected by it because they had to drop out or it just wasn't there. And that has carried on. So what do I see now? Well, I see when I'm not close enough to make a real judgment on it, but when I go into companies, the majority of the people, I see technicians really, and engineers and operators, maintenance workers, and I might have 6 or 8 guys in a room, and it is guys. Unfortunately, it's still male dominated. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's the way it is. And the average age will be maybe 45. So the guys of my age, come up to retirement, and then you might have a couple of mid to late 20s, either come out of their apprenticeship or still apprentices. So I don't see many. I don't see many of these, even big companies, taking on large amounts of apprentices. So if I go back to 78, you probably don't know this, but large companies like Rolls-Royce and Dunlop and GC, they would intake about 30 or 40 apprentices a year. And every year they only used to keep half. They would train 40 engineers, and when they graduated, they would keep the ones that they felt would fit the role, and then the others became journeymen. They went to the smaller companies, and they might actually end up back 2 years, 3 years later at Rolls-Royce or GEC, because they're now gaining experience and have come back. It was almost like a social contract that they had with the engineering industry. And that just doesn't happen now. People will reluctantly take apprentices, and the problem is I'm actually doing some work at the moment with somebody who's trying to help this. And when I was doing my research over the last week or so, I was finding out that about 50% of the apprentices, I tried to get engineers specifically, but it looks like it's overall, about 50% of all the apprentices that are taken on drop out or don't finish. So that's madness, really, because if you need 180,000 engineers a year in the UK, new, that means you've got to train 360,000, and we're not training that many.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I see it's still a big problem. You can't. The thing is with demographics as well, is once they're in, I think they call it's like it's baked in.
Yeah, it's baked. Yeah, yeah, absolutely is.
If I wasn't born in 1962,
yeah, you can't magic people up.
I can't exist. So in other words, from when I was born, I was probably the start of Gen X, probably end of Boomer, I suppose. And I remember going to school with obviously lots of kids my own age, and but the demographics, if you look at it, they dropped off from about the mid 60s in the UK and in the Western world. The demographics for people having kids, people started having 1 or 2 children, whereas I was going to school with there was 6 siblings at school, and I was one of 3 kids, and so once that's lost, then you've obviously the amount of cohort of people you've got to get into engineering is going to be less.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we've had other things that have impacted along the way, like, which I've obviously been against. They've been almost indoctrinating kids for the last 15 to 20 years. You must have a degree. You must go to university and you must have a degree, else you'll fail at life. And of course, they go to university, they've been told a lie, they get a debt, and they come out and they go, what am I going to do now? Because I've got like a degree in, I don't know,
We
Roman
could say
history.
anything. You could insert
You
anything
know, I
there.
mean, you can have a degree in anything now. But so that means that the cohort that were going to go to into a factory, that's the thing is, you say to a 16-year-old now, I'm not going to work in a factory. Yeah, well, they don't know. The thing is, they're not aware of it. So I go into schools and talk about engineering,
Yeah, good.
and what I try and say is, you can start, if you start and you do your thing in 4 or 6 years, you can go anywhere.
Yeah, I've not got a degree. I did my apprenticeship, like you say, and yeah, it's not done me any harm. And I was just speaking to Luke on the previous episode of recording, and again, Luke's similar situation, apprenticeship through the military. You know, I've been lucky that I did mine through the military, and Luke did his through the military, and I know we were talking about our time at Amazon. You know, we spent a good amount of time at Amazon between us, and Amazon, to be fair, I know they're taking a lot of apprentices on, multi-skill, mechanical. Sorry, I think they call them mechatronic engineers these days, apprentices. And also they take on automation engineers as well, right? Which is obviously becoming much more of a needed skill as well. But like you say, I think to touch on the points that you mentioned, I think it's becoming a bit of these less and less apprentices, right? These it almost seems like you don't want to do an apprenticeship. It almost seems like a dirty word for some reason. And like you say, people are getting pushed towards maybe doing a degree when an apprenticeship is a great way to
I
get
do
started in your
work with
career.
one school over the past few years where I go and I talk to kind of, they're usually between 14 and 16. So they know that they've taken their options, they know what they're going to do exam wise, but they want some insight into the kind of what people do for work. And there are more now than there were, say, 3 or 4 years ago. They'd say, oh, I'm looking to do a vocational apprenticeship,
Brilliant.
learning to do something rather than, if I went back pre-COVID, those
Hmm.
schools, that school and a couple of others I used to go to, nearly all of the kids, when I said, right, what are you going to do? Going to university. Why? What do you want to do? Pardon?
I
What do
don't
you want
know.
to do?
Yeah.
Do you want to be a
Yeah. Yeah.
doctor? Do you want to be,
Yeah.
a vet or a dentist? Or do you want to, I don't know, build bridges? I don't know, but my mum and dad say I'm going to university. I've got to get really good A-levels, and I'll go to university, do 3 years there, and then I'll decide. So there's nothing. I feel sorry because I don't see much passion in kids of 14 now, like I had, where I had influences. Obviously, my family influenced me. My dad wasn't an engineer, but my granddad and my uncles were. They all worked for Rolls-Royce in Coventry, and I had some sort of influence. Um, Less and less engineers in engineering, having less children. I've got less influence on children. And then the biggest influence is school teachers. And they don't know the first thing about engineering.
Yeah, very, very, very good points. I think, like you say, it's so somewhat what that sort of first part there, like it's becoming a demographic problem, right? A bigger problem than engineering itself, right? Which is big. I'm going to move us on, Andy. I know it's we could spend a lot of time talking about it. It's interesting though, right? Again, some of the points we touched on around apprentices and again that changing demographic, right? Which is good. I'm going to go now through just reflecting on your time in PepsiCo, and moving into over the past 10 years, past decade that you've had your own business as well. Talk us about your journey with PepsiCo, and I know you are moving away from those sort of prototype type roles into you're then going with Walker's Snacks, PepsiCo and you spent 21 years with them, right? Talk us through that journey. I know you spent a lot of time around condition monitoring and lubrication. So talk us through, your highlights there. Working on shift, but that sort of 21 years in that part of your career.
Yeah, well, I was, the last job that I had at FF Developments, as I say, was in technical procurement. And the deal was, if I did a good job after 6 months, they'd offer me a permanent position. So when I went and I said, okay, this is what I've done. This is how I've dealt with prices and with clients and with our contractors. He said, I can't offer you a job, Andy. It's outside my control. And I'd already seen an advert, and it was a very strange advert. It was in a paper back then, and it was unusual, and it was printed in black and then white lettering on. So it was unusual. And he just said jobs like this were unheard of until now. Time served engineers wanted, and a phone number. So I rang the phone number and I went into like a system where, okay, someone's going to speak to you, and then we'll send you a form. And it was a process of about 3 or 4 months that I went through, from the end of one year, November, December, up until about the March. And the stages were, I did a phone interview, SIFT interview, and then I went to like a half day, full morning it was, aptitude testing, kind of 4 things, including fault finding and bit of basic logic, which I didn't really do. I'm a mechanic. I passed that, and then I went through to interview stage. That was a full day at a hotel, like 3 back-to-back interviews, 45 minutes, all kind of role play thrown in and playing with Lego and all the kind of American PepsiCo stuff you do. But I didn't know what it was. There's another guy there with me from engineering in Coventry. I said, well, it's either got to be automotive or aerospace. And he said, well, I hear it's like an offshoot of Rolls-Royce that are doing something. I said, okay, well, whatever. And at the end of the interview, they said, there were 6 of us. There was only 6 of us. They said, we're going to want you to follow us down we were at a hotel, down onto the trading estate, and we're going to take you into the factory. Well, as we got down there and got out of the car, I could smell sweet corn. And when we went into the place, they'd just commissioning the first Doritos line at Coventry, which would have been in about like May time, I suppose. And then I started in the June as we were just called technicians. We were called technicians because they didn't know really but we were going to do everything. And we did everything. We did sanitation, we ran fryers, we ran the lab, we ran the packaging lines, we fixed everything. So I had to kind of, use some of my skills that I'd picked up in, like, I used to play, kind of restore old cars, which was obviously beneficial, because then obviously I was trying to restore old machines a lot of the time, because they threw a load of old packaging machines in there and said, get on with that. And over those first 2 years, it was kind of a running joke amongst all the technician group. We used to say to each other, jobs like this were unheard of until now. It was like controlled chaos, I'd call it. It was bad, and I think they knew it was bad.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then what they did was every year they put a new line in.
Yeah. Okay.
So every year they put a new line in, and I just got on the kind of cusp of new line going in, and I was involved every time in, right, we're going to start Doritos line 2. I was on there on commissioning with that, so we did the commissioning. Then we started another line, line 3. It might have been line 4. Anyway, whatever it was called at the time, that was going to be a new French fries line. So we went on that, and that was different machines. Every time they did it, it was like kind of they were the same, but they're different models. So Ishidas and T Robacks, stuff like that. And then early days, you used to go and run the fryers and run the pellet plant, and then swap over. 12-hour shifts, nights and days, 4 on, 4 off, 363 days a year.
Yeah, nice. And I think it's very interesting that selection process, right? You didn't, they kept it very vague in terms of, specifically what the industry was and the job, and that bit of uncertainty. But yeah, brilliant that you're one of the first.
They hadn't launched Doritos in the UK. They didn't launch Doritos in the UK till about the August. So they swore us to secrecy when they took us out of the interview to the factory. They said, you can't talk to anybody about this because we haven't launched this product. And
yeah,
that's why couldn't tell us who it was.
Mm, moving more into as you progressed with your time at PepsiCo, I'm sure different roles there. In terms of, like you say, right, I'm sure it evolved over that 21 years. New equipment coming in, new technology. What was your biggest, maybe success? I'd say there, your time at PepsiCo. What you're most proud of your time there? I think, like you mentioned in there around the improvement of uptime and talk us
Yeah,
through that a little bit more.
yeah. Well, I think there was a step change in 2005. So the plant had been open about 11 years, and they decided that controlled chaos wasn't a good way to run a multi-million, $150 million operation. So there was a complete change, and they decided that the technician role would be changed, and we weren't going to be as close to the lines of production, and we would come away, and we were going to reinvent the engineering, maintenance, and operational strategy of the plant with a drive to get it to world-class standard. And I think when I look back on it, the period from 2006, I was asked by the engineering manager, would you step aside, still be on shift, but step aside and deal with condition monitoring and lubrication? Because we had a lubrication partner, but we didn't have anybody that was targeted lubrication. So it was kind of ad hoc when everybody wanted to lube something they might. It was on kind of PMs, but if it got done, it was like a roulette wheel, really. And the other thing was condition monitoring. They didn't do any of that other than they had a third party in, and he used to come in for a day. He used to send a report in, and somebody used to put the report in a drawer and not look at it. So they were saying, well, we need to be more focused on this. So I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I got, and a good thing about the time as well, PepsiCo and Walkers would give you enough rope to hang yourself in a controlled fashion. So
Yeah,
the idea was, I spoke to the maintenance manager, said, okay, what do you want me to do? Because it's a good idea to know what you want your managers to do, was my direct report. I said, okay, you tell me what it is. I said, you want me to do condition monitoring, do lubrication? For what end? And I said, give me top three. So he said, okay, then oven bearing failures, fryer bearing failures. And the third one was, he said, I want to wear a Doritos oven belt out, because we've never worn one out. They've always become scrap because bearing goes, it tracks off, it destroys the belt. The belts were imperial size. They only made them in the US, and you had to ship them in and fly them in. So they're expensive to replace. The lead time was weeks, not days. So those are the things I targeted, and I still tell this story. So this is important to me as a business. I still tell this story that we went from 2006 to 2011, and we did hit world-class standard. We did get below 2% real, not generate, not kind of KPI'd, real. We got less than 2% unplanned downtime, and we were hitting, kind of low to mid 90s of availability of our assets. And that was from like just over 70%. So
yeah,
when
well,
you worked it out tonnage wise, I mean, you're talking like hundreds of tons a week we acquired availability. And that was important because we did then have years where we had periods and weeks where we would hit the full kind of range of the tonnage of the plant, kind of 1,100 ton in a week of snack food, light product. So we couldn't have done that without the work that all of the engineers did together. And the first kind of 12 months was a real kind of trying to turn people around into there was a better way.
yeah, absolutely.
Part of what I do now is I talk to engineers and say, look, it's up to you. I mean, it's no skin off my nose, but there is a better way.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
better way is kind of probably not do PMs every day, all day long, but look at for some signals and look at some signs and then go and action them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you defect elimination. It sounds like getting rid of those top offenders is a big part of that. And like you say, optimizing your planning, your scheduling of PMs, right, is key in that environment. Absolutely. No, good, brilliant, Andy. I think
we deleted within the first year. We kind of deleted or put to bed about 30% of all the PMs that we had historically.
No value add, right?
They were worth nothing.
Yeah,
And the other
absolutely.
thing we learnt as well is a backlog. People talk about backlog. Whenever I go into a company, I say, look, if you've got a backlog where you're looking at things that are like 10 weeks old and they're in the thousands, you're gonna have to like one day go, they don't count anymore. And one of the things we did, we brought a measure in within the first year that said anything that goes in 30 days is not worth doing.
Yeah.
Of course, it's ancient history, isn't it?
Yeah.
How long are you going to go back to go and, grease that thing up? So that was the thing, which is be hard on backlog and question it. Is it really that important?
Yeah, and I think it's a balance, right, with a backlog management. I think it's it's healthy to have some backlog. Of course, you need work to plan and schedule. But like you say, if work orders just sat there stagnating for more than 30, 60, 90 days, however long that may be, however long it deems suitable in your environment, yeah, again, as you mentioned, right, it becomes ancient history. If it's sat there and sat in the background, it's a low priority. Is it ever going to get completed? Does it need completing? That actual task, right? So, yeah, it's a balance, right? Backlog management, absolutely. Okay, Andy, we're gonna talk through now. Talk us through the past 10 years. Past decade. Moving away from PepsiCo. You start your own business, Uptime Consultant. And you've worked with a variety of different clients. You've done some traveling as well. I saw you. You've got some YouTube videos as well of your travels as well, which is brilliant, and documenting your time, which is fantastic. I'm sure you might not have seen yourself doing that maybe 20, 30 years ago.
No.
But maybe similar to myself doing this. But talk us through your time at launching your business. What have you really enjoyed? What's the key highlights for you over the past 10 years? What have you enjoyed most about doing that? Because I know it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, we were fortunate in that, as you said, 21 years in the same factory, and Jenny, my partner in life and in business, was there 19 and a half years as a technical operator in packaging. So, and she ran lines. She kind of became a technician. Really, she ran the operation. So we both had a lot of experience, and we were lucky, I say, in that PepsiCo always goes through these periods of, well, we're going to reinvent a business, and the UK was it was our turn 11 years ago. So they came to the UK and they went through the different factories and different positions, and they said, well, there's going to be so many head of people go at Coventry. And then our aim, me and Jenny, was to get on that train out, and we did. So it was a period of about a year, but you never really knew you were going to go until actually the shift that you left, because they kept it very, they wanted to be in control. I couldn't understand it. That's what they wanted to do. So I'd already been thinking about this anyway. So it's always good to think about these things. So when I got to my late 40s, I thought, I can't stay here all my life. And I'm an oddball, really. So I'm not a very good team player. I know that.
Okay.
I'm focused. I've been like that since I was a teenager, because I realised I could play football, I could play rugby, I could play cricket. I was one that made up the numbers. Yeah, I could run fast. So I was good at rugby because I used to run fast and then throw the ball away. But I never enjoyed it. I enjoyed cross-country running. I enjoyed swimming. I've always been a keen cyclist. I challenged myself. And I've never been a cyclist that cycles with the people.
Okay.
I'm an individual. I kayaked. Me and Jenny went, and for years we kayaked and canoed all around the world, both as in shared boats together and in single kayaks and Canadian canoes. So I've always been that individual type person.
Yeah,
and
okay.
it was kind of grating on me that I was in my late 40s. I thought, I've got to do something maybe in my mid 50s. Well, this came along and I was 53. It just happened a couple of years early. And I thought, well, the uptime thing came from the meetings we used to have. We used to have engineering meetings, technicians, engineering manager, operations would be in there. And they'd bang on and bang on and bang on about KPIs. A lot of them didn't matter. But they'd keep on about downtime this, downtime that, downtime the other. And it would always accentuate the negative. And I was going, I used to throw in a bomb at the end. I go, can we now talk about the uptime and what we've learned from some of the condition monitoring work we've done and the lubrication improvement that's made the assets better? And they'd all look at me gone out. And I knew then that I spent 9 years doing condition monitoring, lubrication, and I can't remember everybody saying thanks very much for that. And you won't. That's the thing you have to deal with is if you are in a preventative, predictive sphere, you'll always be Cinderella. You'll never go to the ball, and you'll never get the plaudits that the guys had just saved the oven again because it went tits and went to the floor. And everybody had to run to it and, out of the canteen because they've been sitting there waiting for something to happen. And they'll get the plaudits. I don't care about plaudits really, but I was focused on what I thought I could bring to the party. So that actually informed the Uptime Consultant name. There's no S on it because there was never going to be anybody but me and Jenny because we're unusual and we formed a business that was about lifestyle.
Good on you.
So we decided when we left there that we weren't going to work for the man and that we were going to work with people we like. Because if you work for people you like, it's like play. I mean, it's brilliant. And I like working with engineers and maintainers because they're cool people. So we decided that, and what we decided was if we could earn enough money to survive in the lifestyle we're used to, we took some financial choices probably early on that other people missed. So we got rid of debt and got rid of mortgage and things like that. So now we are free to go and do the work and then go play. So that's obviously the way we get to go away for a month or 6 weeks when we want or when we can plan and work with clients. So normally what I do is I'll say to somebody if they come new, I'll say, well, let's do 1 day. Let me come in for 1 day for like an 8-hour session and have your guys in a room for a day and I train them a certain subject. Introduction to lubrication is a good one. Introduction to ultrasound or thermography or to condition monitoring and reliability center maintenance. That's really good, like base level. And in that 1 day, I test their procurement system, which is always good to get paid. But also I found out quite a lot by being inside their business for a day about the way their workforce acts, the way the management acts, and there are some people I wouldn't want to work with. So then I'll say it was really great. I really enjoyed it, and nearly all the times I do. But I don't think we're right for each other.
Yep.
We don't fit.
Yeah.
Then the people obviously I do get along. I said, well, it'd be great if we could work with you again. Shall we talk about doing a longer piece of work?
Yeah, good.
And that's worked. That's kind of worked. And then, you occasionally get repeat clients. So over the last few years, what I've done is I've said, look, if you're 100 miles away, then I won't do less than 2 days back to back. If I'm coming to your plant, I'm going to come up the day before. I'm going to spend 2 days there. I'm probably going to stay overnight and then come back. So I'm not up and down the motorway every day. I don't like that. So, that way they buy 2 days, and I think they get more value out of 2 days than they'll ever get out of one.
Mm-hmm.
One's very hard.
Yeah.
And the best ones I've had is when they'll free up a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's hard for them to get the technicians free for 3 days, but if you have a group of people for 3 days, you suddenly start finding by day 2, oh, there's that. And so me, I can't go in and just teach somebody this is what you get in a book. I want to teach them what I've found helped me, because you're going to get you ahead. So I want to see their assets. I want to go with them to their assets. I want to say to you, what do you think? Tell me what's what you think, and then we get into a deeper conversation. And by day 3, we've gone way past the scope of what I promised to deliver, and they can see the difference in people. You can't really see the difference in people in 6 out of 8 hours, but by 3 days, you can see a real change.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think, you're able to build that relationship with them then after those, more than one day, 2, 3 days, you start and get to know the people. And like you say, right, I respect that you've got such clear boundaries, right, with your business. I think that's again, like you said, you're doing it for you and your partner, and you both own the business.
It depends on your time preference.
Yeah.
So my time preference at this age is shorter than other people's. So again, I did this trustee training years ago with the pension trustees online training, and there's a whole module about demographics and fan charts. You start thinking about how long you got left, and once you go, I could say so to anybody. When you're 50, you go, "Oh, I'm 50. That's amazing. I'm 50." And you kind of have that kind of this between 40 and 50 is kind of some midlife thing. You start thinking about what should have done, what I want to do in the future, like I did. When you turn 60, you go, well, I'm 75% way through. It's like I said to Jenny the other day, I said, it's like an hourglass, with the sand. And I said, when you watch that hourglass, I used to do it obviously when you do kids' games and that. You used to watch that hourglass, and I always used to be intrigued as a kid that when it gets down to the last centimetre, it goes ever so quick. It accelerates, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That sand. And I think life is like that. So, I mean, Facebook memories, I had one today 10 years ago. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah, brilliant. I think just to pick up on some of the things you said around in your business, specifically around maybe even going back to that PepsiCo example, right? You said there when you're in a proactive role, should we say, you don't get them plaudits. You've almost got I kind of call it internally market your successes, right? Otherwise, no one will celebrate them for you. No one's going to pat yourself on. No one's going to pat you on the back unless they really know, like you say, some maybe a senior engineering leader. And people reactive. The hero gets the pat on the back. Great job. Well done for saving the day and keeping the plant from shutting down. But again, when you're in that proactive space, because you don't see the impact that work has every day, you see it over a longer period of time. I think it's a really good point you make, and something I've definitely seen is.
Well, the thing that I share with people when we talk about this, I say, well, the fryer bearing failures, that was one of my targets. So from my maintenance managers said, get rid of fryer bearing failures. So we did. I eradicated them. Now, fryer bearing failures, if a fryer bearing goes in a 1.5 ton fryer, you only know, the first thing you know about it is that the magnetic detectors go off in primary packaging. So you're already putting metal down the throat of magnet detectors, and that's the first you know about it, because you can't see bearings in a fryer. And that migrates, all that, when that collapses, all that migrates throughout the system. You have massive holes, you have to stop the line. Some of the line has to keep going. On Doritos, you can't stop it. It's a continuous process, wet corn process. So you have to start dumping it. So that means yield goes down. All of the impacts. So the whole story about doing that took about a year, and then it took about 6 months to implement by me badgering people in engineering to we can do this, we can get it done. I had to get the engineering manager to buy a bearing set that was 10 times cost of a normal set, but I justified it to him on paper. So you have to do that. If you don't, for me, if there's no ROI, if there's no ROI in saving fryer bearings collapse, I wouldn't have done it. Yeah. There's got to be, for me, and I always say to people, if you're going to do something, be pedantic. If there's an ROI there, go for it. And for me, that story again went over kind of a 5 or 6 year period, whereby the end goal was what I wanted was in the future a production line where we had 2 new fryers installed. Those bearings were installed as OEM parts against the will of the procurement team. They
Yep.
didn't want to install them because it means nothing to them. They don't operate them. They don't have to pick up the pieces. So that's the goal, is to eradicate. But the thing is, if you don't cause any noise, you don't get the plaudits. So by eradicating something, after 6 months, nobody even thought about fryer bearing changes or, having like massive holes, having to call pallets back because of metal detectors. So that's the thing. If you're successful at being a condition monitoring engineer in a plant and using predictive technologies, your aim is to make yourself redundant and unseen. And if you're doing it as a business, like I've been doing it, the sell that you've got to do is you've got to sell a future benefit for a payment now.
Yeah.
And people don't like that. People like to actually pay for things that are broken, which is really strange, I find. They'd spend tens of thousands of dollars on something that's broken, but won't spend a few $1,000s to make sure it never breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's maybe almost getting into the realms of humans and coming back to your meeting that you said, those production meetings, we're obsessed a lot of the time with the obsessed with the downtime, obsessed with this instead of and we used to speak about this, talk about the successes, right? We used to at Amazon, it was a bit corporate-y, but they would always have to sort of start a meeting with the success, and it was quite good actually because it sets it on the front, sets the meeting off on the right foot, sets the tone. And again, you're talking about something, at least one thing positive, right? As opposed to, there's loads of, like you say, right? There's loads of problems, lots of issues out there that you can go and look to fix at the end of the day. But again, yeah, it's important you celebrate your successes, right? Especially when, they may go unnoticed. And like I say, for me, that's like doing a bit of internal marketing, shall we say, as a maintenance team, making sure people know the value of it. And because otherwise you make a big change like that over a period of 5-6 years, right? It's a long time. And within 6 months, like you say, everyone's, well, that's not an issue anymore, right? It's gone and it's past, right? Which is interesting. Andy, just moving into, again, around maintenance reliability, you can see we got some notes from you. Again, showing your preparedness, right? Maybe I got some notes from you before the session. But you put here, OEMs are usually wrong. Talk us through that as a thought, and in your experience, why are OEMs usually wrong in your experience?
Yeah, well, so some of the work I did later on, before I left PepsiCo, we were involved in the criticality processes of lines. So we started in one place and we ended up in actually looking at all of the lines from a critical point. So we reinvented the maintenance strategy based upon criticality. So that criticality process, I was involved in part of. There was actually level 3, which is the condition monitoring lubrication part, in writing that. And I was also involved in carrying out criticalities and then also being somebody that watched over somebody's shoulder doing their first ones. That taught us a lot about the assets and what we needed the people to do. Of course, a lot of the times you were throwing people at assets that had no knowledge of them, or the information was missing. And what I found out then, and now I still carry out criticalities for other clients. I did a chemical production company recently, that the OEM, or the person that builds your production line, they have a dilemma because they have a specification that sometimes the client has probably lowballed, or they've not thought it out correctly. And then they give that to somebody to design and to build and to deliver, and a turnkey. People going about always a turnkey. And then by the time the production people get it, guess what? When they turn the key, the thing breaks, or it doesn't work properly, or the bearings aren't fit for service. And that is because, again, from the bit that I did at Noel Turbines, I worked in the design department. You had a procurement bucket. You had a bucket of parts that you would be aligned to. Now, if you're building turbines, that was obviously at a higher criticality. But if you're building something's going to make snack food or, I don't know, Mars bars or a chemical, it's probably a lower criticality. So what they do is they go, well, actually, we can get away with this $9 bearing. It's on our parts book, so we can just put that in. And then when you go and look at it as an engineer that has to look after it, you go, why on earth did they put that crap in there? That's never, ever going to be good enough for that. And even on commissioning, you go, oh, what's happened here? And they just say you have to live with it. And we did live with PepsiCo, we lived with some of this stuff until we started doing this work on criticality. And then we bring in re-engineering. So we'd go re-engineer. So we say, okay, the specification, hands up, it wasn't right in the first place, or things have moved on, and we need to look at this and come up with a solution. Because that's, after all, we're engineers. And that was a big thing they gave us, that process of going from, over double figures and planned downtime to less than 2%. That fills up a lot of labour hours, frees up a lot of labour hours from technicians and engineers that have been fixing things and now to engineering things. So we started doing our job. I mean, I've never been a maintenance engineer. I'm not. I don't want to be a maintenance. I'm a production engineer with a background in machining. But I like to look at things. I always like to look at things at a slightly different angle or step back a bit. Whereas other people get too involved in jumping in and, well, it always does this, so we're going to fix it now. And you don't, yeah, well, why do you keep fixing it?
Yeah, and you got that mindset of that always improving, right? Maybe from your production engineering days, right? Around how can you engineer out the problem? And again, coming back to that defect elimination, as opposed to just replace bearing like for like and just maintain that current condition of it, should we say, right? Which is it's a good mindset. Just conscious of time, Andy, talk us through, I picked up, saw some of your content and some of the talks you did online before I started this interview. People at the core of it, that's something that really shone through in some of the work that you've done. Talk us through where that that sort of people-centric approach and your sort of passion of pushing people as being the core of it. Of course, without the human, right? It's AI is not going to solve all of our problems. I've been speaking to a lot of people about AI and lots of these. The question is, where does that talk us through your sort of people-centric approach, which is interesting, right? Because you mentioned you're not a team. You say you're not the best team player. You're quite individual, which I think is really candid for you to say that, right? It's really honest reflection of knowing how you approach things. So talk us through maybe those sort of tensions there around people being at the core.
Yeah, well, it's good to know yourself.
Absolutely.
So, and I in the PepsiCo environment, I used to get the review process, which is like really weird. And you're not a team player. I said, yeah, I know. That's it. For me, that's a positive, because I step outside and I'm looking at things that you'd never even think about. But that doesn't mean to say I'm not a people person. So I think that me being brought up in that early R&D prototyping environment, especially at the 6 years in the motorsport environment, the timelines were short, and that business excelled because we could do timelines that other people couldn't do. And that's because I could go to the designer's desk as a machinist and talk to Bill Simpson, who designed Massey Ferguson transmissions and Jaguar Motorsport transmissions, and talk to him and go, Bill, I don't think this is going to machine very well. Now he's like 20 years older than me, but he went, okay, just talk me through that. So I'd talk him through about clearance for boring bars and how you're going to actually get this lined up. And he'd go, okay, there's another way of doing it. Well, it was the amalgamation of design office being close to machine shop, being close to build shop, where so sometimes the builder would just across from where my machine was would come and go, okay, well, can you just come and get this on your machine and take a little bit off there, because the gear's kind of, it should clear, but the casting's kind of weird. And so we worked together to build the best transmissions in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what they were. They were the best transmissions, four-wheel drive transmissions in the world. They won World Rally Championships. But that was only because the people talked to each other and understood. And I understood then that there were some people that were very abrasive and some people were very amenable and some people you'd have to engage them in a conversation first before you approach the subject. And then when I was in the PepsiCo business, that was even like times 100 because there's like very corporate types and then there's people that are very, it's a strange scenario. And probably you know about this. It's like, can't we just make snack food? Can't we just make it really good and get the machines so that they can make it at that envelope, we know it's good at 85%. And if you try to tell me you want it 105, it ain't going to work. So there was that kind of conversation. And then obviously when I was training people in the business, everybody's different. We're all an original model.
Absolutely.
So I don't go for this thing. There's certain types of people and you put a blue light on him and a red light on him. And I think we're all different. If you want to sell a book, then go and do that. I think there is a guy who did it. But I think everybody's different and everybody's got their own motivations in life and being at work. And then obviously the people I dealt with that were on 12-hour shifts, I empathise with them because I did as well. So I got up at 5 a.m. I went to work, clocked on at 6:15, didn't get out of the factory till 7:15 at night, hardly had anything to eat, had a shower, went to bed, da-da-da-da-da. So you empathise with what that effect that has on their bodies and their mind and their well-being. And I think that's stood me in good stead when I go into other places where I'm standing in front of some engineers and my first sell to them is, I was you.
Yeah.
I was you for 20 years.
Yeah.
No, I know what you've all got your arms crossed and your legs crossed. Let's uncross them and let's think about being accepting of, I'm going to be
different
respected.
ideas.
Yeah, we're going to respect each other. Let's do it.
Absolutely. I think that's it's a good point, right? Around mutual respect. Everyone's different. Absolutely. What might engage some person might turn someone else off, right? So, it's interesting. What opinion, Andy, do you hold most? Well, what opinion do you hold that most people disagree with you on the most?
The first one when I go into to businesses is that your planned maintenance is probably worth nothing. All of those things that you tick off and you mark your KPIs against, they're probably less than you think. And of course, they might try and defend that. And I'll say, well, what if you got 20% unplanned downtime? If they're that good, if it was really that good, why is your plant like a bag of crap? Why have I been in your lube room and it's like a barn? It's like, so there's that. And the other thing is that some place I go into, they say, well, we want you to do this. We don't always go outside the box. I said, well, forget it then, because I'm going to go outside the box. If I'm going to go and speak to your employees of a certain subject, if we drift into something else that is a problem for them, then I'm going to discuss that. And some of them don't like that. So some of them don't like me going to their business and being empathetic towards their employees. That's strange. But, I've had that feedback, and I've said, well, you were told when I came in that if somebody's going, well, for instance, if you go into a place and say, well, look, we need you to get these guys from one place to another because the maintenance is rubbish and they're not very good at it. And then you go in and within an hour you see that operationally they're hamstringed. And you've got to go to the operation and say, you don't give these guys a chance because look at the stuff, look at the input you're giving them. That product can't run on that packaging machine. So there's those kind of things, and people might disagree with me, and that's good. I like, to be honest, I encourage disagreement. That's how we get
How we get better,
conversation.
right? It's how we get better as well, right? Absolutely.
If somebody doesn't disagree with me and then keeps it to themselves, that's worse.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. Andy, last question, just around, I suppose starting to wrap up around the challenges you faced. What do you see? You know, I mentioned AI. I feel like I can't do a podcast without mentioning AI these days,
Mention
unfortunately.
AI. I like AI.
Maybe you'll disagree with me here. Let's get one in that you'll disagree with me on. Talk us about your view on AI, right? Again, a lot of people I speak to, some people saying it's having massive gains in their business. What are your thoughts on it? I'm interested to hear what you think, what your views are on it. Is there any upside to it? Do you see the upside to it?
But for background, I've been studying machine learning, LLM, artificial intelligence for over 10 years. So I also partnered with a software company that used algorithms and machine learning algorithms to do predictive maintenance on a client's assets, and I help them with the human part of that, the dashboard. So I know how large language models work. I understand pretty much the basics of how they work. I know where artificial intelligence comes from, and I would recommend to anybody this book. Go and buy this book and read it. Then talk about artificial intelligence. So this book, I like the subtitle on here. It's a guide for thinking humans. So let's not regurgitate. Somebody says, AI is a good tool, so we'll just do this. And people don't know enough about AI, I don't think, to make informed choices. So, but people are obviously using things like OpenAI and Claude and ChatGPT to do little things for them. And they say, oh, they're a good tool and we do this and do that. They don't know what's working in the background. They're all built on large language models that is based on theft, mainly theft of IP and original
IP,
idea.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's being drawn from everywhere. OpenAI is, everybody knows about it. OpenAI went against YouTube's kind of say so, didn't even ask them, and they downloaded thousands of hours of dialogue from YouTube just to go. The thing is, with the way it's going, is they say that bigger and bigger models are going to get them better and better and better, and the facts are the bigger and bigger models, it's getting worse and worse and worse. AI is not intelligent. Even the definition for intelligence is not known. The artificial intelligence actually is 70 years old this year. The phrase artificial intelligence, because it came from 1956 from Dartmouth College, and was a guy called John McCarthy, who was a 28-year-old computer scientist. So I was, an early computer scientist, and he set up this forum. It was going to take place during the summer, and he was trying to think of something to call it. So he called it artificial intelligence. If I just read this little passage here.
Yeah, please.
McCarthy later admitted that no one really liked the name. After all, the goal was genuine, in italics, not artificial intelligence. But, inverted commas, I had to call it something, so I called it artificial intelligence. He called it artificial intelligence to get people there, because there's nobody interested in it. Then he goes on to say, by the early 60s, John McCarthy had set up, all these people went and set up kind of businesses. He went and set up Stanford Artificial Intelligence Project with the goal of building a fully intelligent machine in a decade. Hasn't happened.
Okay.
He was going to build by 1970. We're now in 2026, 70 years later, and it hasn't happened. So if you want to dig even deeper, I would say go and look at the Empire of AI. Is another good book. That's actually a background of OpenAI and the kind of schemes they're pulling to deprive people of water and power around the world.
Yeah, well.
Do you want to be involved with it? Not me.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. I think, like you say, the subtitle of the book, "The Thinking Human," right? You can't let us take that. The thinking of a human brain, right? You can't take that away. Ultimately, you can't. Yeah, you could substitute your thinking and get that to spit out, like you say, IP that's already out there.
I mean, it's happening with teenagers and people are going to university that they're using ChatGPT and they're using Claude and they're using OpenAI to cheat.
Yep.
Basically, they're using it to cheat. And all they're cheating is themselves because they haven't done the brain work on coming up with a thesis and see what
critical
extrapolates
thinking
into the future.
Yeah.
They are just cheating the system to get a certificate that means nothing. So it's a dumbing down of a population of people. Do we really want the engineers that we've already got to be dumbed down into the AI says this or OpenAI says that? And I've done an article on that on LinkedIn that talks about how if we go down this route, that something remote tells us what to do, and then we as intelligent beings think it's not the right thing to do. How does that feel to us? And if we're instructed to do it and we do it and the thing breaks, what does that prove? It's not, it doesn't add up.
Well, you can't, and I was speaking to Luke about this, right? You can't substitute the human decision, though, right? Should we say? AI should, as many people sort of view it, is to aid you to get to a point, but you still got to make a human decision at the end of the day, right? And you've still got to use your human senses in a manufacturing setting, should we say, right? To make that correct decision, should we say, of getting to the right problem, fixing the right issue, etc. But it's a big topic. Andy, I know we're getting to time, but thank you for coming on. I'm going to start wrapping us up. Is there anything else that we've not touched on that you really wanted to speak about? Again, I'm just conscious we are over time. But it's been great having you on. It's been interesting.
If anybody's planning a trip to Japan, we did a 5-week trip to Japan, and I captured it all on film, and we're now editing all of those on Uptime Journey on YouTube. So it does share engineering content as well, and the thermography stuff has gone down really well. So
yeah, brilliant. So that where people can find you, right? YouTube. You're on LinkedIn as well, right?
I'm always on LinkedIn every day, and obviously Uptime Consultant.
Yeah,
good thing here. The website, and anybody can message me on LinkedIn, and I always reply.
Yeah, brilliant. And maybe you'll get a few people to try and disagree with you, right? Maybe get a few people to have a good conversation and a good thrashing out of what they might disagree with you or agree with you on, right? You've made some really good points, mate. It's been good.
Yeah, I think if we just go through the motions of things and don't hang a flag on something, then we're not doing ourselves any service, really. And I've got to be truthful. So, but the thing is, I wouldn't say, oh, AI is rubbish because I think it's rubbish. I've studied it. I've read the books. I've got one guy at Warwick University he's now he was a professor and now he's an ex-lecturer. He's older than me. I have some really good conversation with him about artificial intelligence. He kind of knew these people. So he met McCarthy. So he's a really interesting guy to speak to because he's a mathematician, and he will say, you're wasting your time at large language models thinking you're going to get artificial intelligence. And as for AGI, that's just like science fiction ain't going to be.
Okay.
But people are making money out of it, you see.
Yeah, absolutely. No, brilliant, Andy. It's been great having you on, mate. Good conversation. We've touched on a broad, different number of topics there, right? We've gone deep into.
I look forward to part 2.
Yeah, well, we'll have to catch up again. There's so much like I say, I've still got a list of questions that I didn't get through, but we're gonna have to wrap up there. We're an hour and 10 in, but thanks, Andy, for your time. Thanks again for staying up, mate. And I'll speak to you. Been great having you on, mate.
Have a good day. Cheers.
Thanks Andy. Take care. Bye-bye.